This is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready. We're about to live in your head rent-free.
Hello, Otterites. Welcome to episode 226.
I am Martin.
I'm Robert.
I'm Francis.
I'm Andre.
And I'm Cajun.
Today we are having a code of honor, and similar to what we did 2 episodes ago, we are going to have a multitude of quotes instead of just one.
Look at him being the rule breaker.
That's right. I tingle.
I never took you for it, brother Andre, to be such a disruptor, an anarchist.
Yes, anarchist. That's a
I
good
will
word.
continue until stopped.
That's pretty much an anarchist,
That's-
yeah.
I'm
anarchy, that's
comfortable
right.
with chaos. Go for it, brother.
Well, today we are going to start with several quotes, and like we did 2 episodes ago, we're going to try and keep our comments succinct to see how many we can get through.
Does he not understand what code of honor is?
Evidently not.
I think he said it well. This time we're going to go a mile wide and inch deep versus the reciprocal of that.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, we'll see how that works.
Yes, we'll see how that.
You all talking about responses, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
say, every once in a while we do manage to snicker like 12-year-olds when we say go deep. Or
Yes,
something.
yes.
I've never experienced that any other way.
Never mind.
Skip a bit, brother.
Tuna can. It's not very far in, but we can stretch out the sides.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Okay, with that, let's start with a quote.
Get us
from-
back in charge there, Captain.
Okay, let's start with a quote from Seneca.
Oh, love it.
Ooh.
And it starts with, we suffer.
No, we're 12-year-old boys. You can't start there.
We can handle this, guys. We can do this.
We suffer more in our imagination than in reality. Thoughts?
Well, I would agree absolutely. I think the mind is the greatest weapon against us as it is for us. Reason is our number one tool, God given to us, but it can easily fire back at us. And I think you're exactly right. This goes back to that Emerson quote about the hobgoblin of little minds, and that's it's the same.
H.L. Mencken.
This is true. It's inappropriate. It is often attributed to Emerson, but not correctly. And that's, I think we
As you have aptly demonstrated.
yes.
At least I think it's
Yeah.
H.L. Mencken.
In any case, it's an excellent quotation that tells us that we are our worst enemy at times. If we could get out to use a quote from Bono, if we could get out of our own way sometimes, then success, however we want to define that, would be ours.
Yeah. Situations always do seem worse
I yield the floor.
than what they really are.
Let's succinct it this way. Self-flagellation. Come on, give me one for that.
Yeah.
Self-flagellation, come
Boner.
on.
Flagellation?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Continue.
That's just my accent. Cuts deeper than a whip held by any other hand.
Your accent or self-flagellation?
Cuts
Okay.
deeper than a whip held by any other hand.
That's a nice turn of phrase there.
Self-flagellation cuts deeper than a whip by any other hand, and I think you're exactly right.
That's well said.
We are our own worst enemies at times.
Yeah,
We have met the enemy, and he is us.
Yeah, very good.
a coworker of mine said his grandfather used a folklorish explanation of this quote to say, worry is a down payment on problems we ain't got yet.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how we are circling around what is apparently a universal truth that humans, the flaws that we bring into any given circumstance, need to be examined and skeptically viewed as being for our own good.
And you brought up a term, I think, during that really is the core of it, and that reason. In other words, that worry and that everything, those fears are emotions, but if we reason things out, we often come to the solution, and it's not as horrible as it is first.
So you would suggest that
Oh, sometimes it's worse.
you would suggest that
But you find a way out.
the reason for our self flaw does not lie in reason, but in emotion.
Well,
In other words, reason is always a
since
true north.
we
whereas
love to aspire
Emotion
to
is not.
a Vulcan state of mind.
Oh,
He did that.
he opened the door.
I would, yeah, please, let's not go there this early. I would disagree with that a bit. with what Francis just said, and Francis, as a deacon, you should know better than this, I would say.
Oh, I'm throwing hand grenades, gentlemen.
Reason is not the be all end all.
Correct.
Neither is emotion.
All right.
But first of all, I again, being Catholic, I like the both and. But I think that because the way you stated it was that basically that you're always wrong. It sounded like you're saying you're always wrong when you go with emotion as opposed to reason.
That's my question.
And I would say absolutely not, because without emotion, we absolutely will not and almost cannot honor that, wait for it, inherent dignity of the human person. Logic and reason never lead us there. Logic and reason are, and again, I'm not saying this is where you guys are going. Logic and reason is how you put 6 million people in cattle cars and send them to Buchenwald.
Because it's for the good of the state.
Good of the Volk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Oddly enough, using emotion to drive the people to that, but you start out with
right,
the premise is rationally derived.
Yeah. The rationality is often selfish.
Yes.
Using a combination of rationality and compassion can lead you to the right decision.
Yes.
But in the context of Seneca, just in that quote,
yes.
Right.
Again, the stark emotion, the initial emotion of a situation, and that worry and that concern can doesn't really get you to a solution.
Untempered emotion?
Yeah, so again, very Catholic. It's both and. It
Yes.
is very much a universal. Okay, that you have to take in the universe of both things, and use your rationality, your reason, to escape, because the emotions telling you of your rational choices, because there's not always one rational way out.
Right.
Your emotion is telling you which of the rational choices then makes the most sense.
Well, that's
And
not
then-
even always true, because so for instance, where I was thinking about in my head was, so over reliance on either one can be bad. So
Sure,
obviously,
sure.
and honestly, over reliance on either one can still lead you to Buchenwald and
Oh, yeah.
in the concentration camps. But in a more normal setting, over reliance on emotion leads you to wanting to do things that you simply don't have the means to do.
Yeah.
So, for instance, on a national level, let's pay for everybody's student loans. Is that really a wise thing? Maybe there's rational reasons to do it, but the question is emotionally driven,
yeah.
not rationally driven. And you cannot have one without the other and arrive at a good solution almost all the time. It's just impossible.
Right. I mean, and we've talked about this. One of the genius pieces of Trek is that Kirk is the synthesis of McCoy's emotion and Spock's rationality.
Yes.
So you would suggest then that pure logic, to use your analogy, is ultimately sterile,
Because it is cold and emotionless.
right? Versus the pure emotion is chaotic,
Right.
and
that's
unfocused.
The emotional impact of Spock is especially from, the second film and Khan, and he makes a rational decision that, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. But it's also an emotional decision in that it's taken to save others. It's a selfless, rational decision based on his empathy for the others.
His integration of his humanity and his
Yes.
Vulcanness together create the only real solution. And I think that's, Robert, that's what you're kind of talking about, is we must be both.
Yes,
Yes.
because rationally he could say, I'm only concerned about myself. That is
Right.
my greater good. I'm getting in an escape pod and screw the rest of
And
you
getting
guys.
it right. I mean, the rational thing might be, well, okay, I had one of them suits in the last movie. I'll just do that. Shoot
getting
my
a
way
shuttle.
out. yeah, get in the shuttle, and then I'm good. But that was not the real rational decision.
Or emotionally, he could have gone to the same way. Screw you guys. I'm tired of McCoy always giving me grief. I'm out of here.
Whereas Cartman would say, "Screw you guys,
I'm out of here.
going home."
Yes.
That's right.
Going home.
Well, yeah, I believe that similar to Eastern philosophy, you can't have one without the other. They
The
balance.
yin and yang. Yes.
Yin and yang, yeah,
They balance each other
that's
out.
a very good analogy of that.
But I also believe that we might be looking at the 40,000 foot view of this statement and not the
True.
intimate, the visceral.
Okay.
Think personally.
Word boner.
Yeah, that's good.
Visceral. Awesome.
Think about the last time you wrestled with worry, and did it actually come to fruition, or were you overblowing it in your mind, thinking of the worst
Yep.
possible scenario?
Very much. We do. We go there immediately. Oh, well, wait a minute. That hasn't happened yet. Let's back that down.
Well,
just
it's
a touch.
it's a function of where we are on the risk versus reward continuum, as it were. If we are highly risk averse, we're always going to go there first. If we are not so much that, we would not be.
Again, we're looking for a balance.
Well, and I'm sorry, Cajun, go
I was
ahead.
going to say it's kind of like dissecting between prepared and panicked.
That's true.
Yep.
That's
It's
right.
the level you look at it and worry about. Are you
It is a
looking at
question
to
of
prepare
degree.
for the possibility? Or are you panicking over that possibility will happen and never blooms?
Well,
And
the Washington quote of "In time of peace, prepare for war" is based on that. Is the proper response.
well, and again, yeah, and is it?
I think Sung had said something on that well before Washington.
Could be. Honestly, I think it's probably good that we consider those worst possible scenarios, because it puts, if you know what the worst thing that could happen, then you've got a starting point, as far as what you need to do to avoid that. Because honestly, if you only prepare to avoid for, it only might go, say, 10% bad, you might get screwed then, because it might be a lot worse than you actually think it is. So sometimes actually thinking about what those worst case scenarios are
Yep.
is a good thing.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you need to dwell on them
Yeah.
and only think about them.
Well, as Worf would
Again,
say, they must not
act.
rule you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quote was, "We suffer more in our imagination." I think the suffer is the key word.
Yep.
Yes, we have to prepare and be ready, but not dwell.
Right.
They must not rule us.
Yes, correct.
Because the dwelling is where the dwelling without action is where the suffering comes from.
In other words, don't self-whip yourself. See, I didn't try to use that big word this time. To the point of where you're not capable of doing anything.
Right.
Yeah, you can't let it freeze you.
Unless you enjoy that. No
I'm
king
mobilized.
shaming here now.
That's true. Yeah.
Unless it immobilizes you.
Excellent, Andre.
Okay, let's move on to our
Let's move
next
on.
one. The next quote I have is from George Eliot.
Excellent.
It is never too late to be what you might have been.
Ooh, you're speaking of the raw power of potentiality, and does that? In other words, Eliot is saying it does not diminish to zero over time.
Until you diminish to
Yeah, that's
zero.
right. Until it is, if it's never too late, then the answer is always a non-zero function.
When you have a dream, you chase it. It doesn't matter if you're 6 or 60 or 80.
The practical side of me says that sounds great, and there's some truth to it.
Mr. I'm getting a book published at the age of 58.
Well, that's right.
Grandma Moses might have had a disappointing career had she never chose to start painting.
There are, of course, always exceptions. But at some point, though, on certain things, for example, there's no question that I could have ever been a NFL athlete. But it's a obviousness that none of us at this point in our lives could be that, no matter what our back history was. There are some dreams that are simply unattainable.
Sometimes you miss your window.
New geriatric league we might qualify for. You never know what the future has in her. I think I'm a prime example of this. I've went and done and recreated myself a dozen times over in the last 50
right.
plus years and never followed a certain path. For the listeners that don't know, I never had children, so that made it easier in one aspect.
Yes.
It makes it regrettable in others sometimes when you stop and think about it, but it is neither good nor bad in itself that I didn't. I've definitely had stepchildren along the way that I love dearly, and other family members that would fall into almost that classification of being an uncle and so forth. But no, I have to agree that it's never too late.
But your
You have to
options,
be realistic on what you're
I was
physically
gonna say, because your
capable
options
of.
are not infinite, though.
Well, hold on. Read the quote again.
The quote as presented was, "It is never too late to be what you might have been."
Right. So
Okay, so that automatically excludes things that you never could have been.
Well, let's turn this around though. You and I here, Francis, we're talking about potentialities of achievement,
Yes.
but let's go thinner than that, or let's go more at a basic level. It's never too late to be what you might have been. It's never too late to reinvent your humanity.
ooh.
It's never
Okay.
too late to understand the inherent dignity of the human person.
Thank you.
So, to be what you might have been, if you take it as what you might have been as you could have been a decent human being instead of a scumbag. Second chances are out there. It's not too late until the hangman
Take your last
pulls the
breath.
lever,
Yeah.
or the executioner pushes the plunger. It's never too late to repent. Now,
There's that magic
People-
word. I was hoping we would get there.
people might not accept your repentance, but that's not on you.
That's
Right.
That's between you and whatever else there is to you. But it's what you might have been. It's never too late to grow as a human.
There's
being.
that
And-
word I'm looking for, growth.
And what's the the ultimate end here? And obviously this is not going to be true for everybody, but what might I have been? Well, if we want to look at that as what the highest best thing I could have been, child of God, faithful child of God,
I mean, I still have the opportunity not to be a jackass.
right.
I
Doesn't
might
mean
not-
you're going
I
to
might
take
not
it.
Get there. I
Well-
might consciously choose to continue to be a jackass.
And I guess it depends on what you define the teleological function of what we're talking about here.
Word boner.
Yeah. In other words, what the end game is, because like in the movie, and I mentioned this before, On the Waterfront, Marlon Brando's famous for saying, "I could have been a contender. I could have been a contender," and it's thinking that that has passed. He cannot go back to that ever again. And there's some degree of certain roads, once
Right.
you do not take them,
Right, yeah.
will not reappear.
Right. You're right. For achievement, sometimes the window closes.
That's correct.
But you can reimagine them. Let's go
Well-
back to the NFL statement we made. You never could have been an NFL star. Well, let's reimagine it. Maybe you don't have to be an NFL athlete star. Maybe you can be some kind of promotion in the department, promoting the team and being a part of it.
I have it.
Reimagine it.
Yes.
And
And you
still
could
feel
have been-
the desire you want to feel.
And who knows, you might have been able to play in the NFL, but early on, you never pursued the things that are required to be able to do that.
That's right. Sooner or later, windows close as
Well,
you go along.
You've pointed out that none of us would make an NFL roster. That doesn't stop us from trying. You and I could go out at spring training camp and try out. We know that we're not going to make it, but if that is a dream of ours, don't we owe it to ourselves to try?
Well, I think
Well,
it's bigger
there's-
than that. I think that there's a question of a temperance of our
Yeah.
vision in this.
There's a difference between a dream and a delusion.
Thank you. That's probably exactly where I'm wanting to go.
And I think what might have been, which is the wording of the quote, to me, that implies a higher thing than
Simple practical achievement.
yes.
use
But lean either too far towards temperance or delusion will destroy the vision itself.
Oh,
So, well, here I
maybe.
think a real life example can be very instructional because I think he's right on the money. So you take football. So, a fella named Matthew Berry. I don't know. You guys are kind of out of the fantasy football business.
Right.
I'm still involved. So he starts out. He's just a guy. Gets out of college. He wants to figure out to be a screenwriter. So he's working in Los Angeles. Screenwriting. He kind of washes out of that. On the side, though, he starts doing this newsletter about fantasy football. It's in its infancy. And he decides, you know what? I'm going to make this a real thing. This is not going to be a sideline anymore. I've got to figure out how, but I can turn this into a livelihood. And he does. And now he's pretty much basically the number one fantasy football commentator. And kind of, makes his own future out of that with a long-term contract at ESPN. When that ended, now he's at NBC. Podcasting, writing, all of these things that, we'd like to be doing. He has done them.
So you're saying
within this kind of this thing of, he invented basically an industry that he now dominates, sort of.
Exactly. He reimagined what he needed to do.
But-
He imagined
But he
what it
did
meant to be
this
a writer.
with a raw material that he possessed. So to use the quotation that you're talking about here, if you have the raw materials, and there's a presumption of that.
He had the analytical mind.
That's
to
right. That's the raw
understand,
material. That's
y-
right.
You know,
Yeah, you can reinvent yourself always within the confines of the raw materials that you have to work
I think
with.
you're always doing that.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I can say to knock down your premise to begin with is
Yeah.
this. I think it's a flawed premise. You can't be an NFL star. Not that the premise is as far as
I know,
refuting the quote,
Yeah.
because obviously, no, I agree. You cannot be an NFL star.
Thank you. Let's
100% agree. With
I think I'll have a drink on that one. That's for sure.
But the thing is, again, what you might have been, you were never interested in that in the first place.
The raw materials were not there.
So I don't know. The interest is necessarily the thing.
Perhaps, but
because
had I had any talent, my interest might have gravitated there.
you never went into a direction where you might have developed the talent. So so again, it starts with that desire.
Yep.
And so I think saying that what if I want to be an NFL star? Well, not only is that ship sailed, you never even got on that ship. You never bought a ticket for that ship.
No,
okay?
didn't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So that is
had
not
no
in the
interest.
realm of might have been.
Right. So what we're talking about here, as Andre was saying, is this is the dream is not infinite. It is inherently tethered to the person
Yes.
and
To what
their
you are.
raw materials.
Oh, I got one for you. As Claire once said to Sheriff Johnson, you ain't too stupid to learn now, are you?
That's true.
Lonesome Dove.
There's-
So you can change that in your abilities and create new ones.
Within limits. Within limits. You're
Oh,
correct.
there are no limits.
Well, no, because you cannot.
So we're going to see you on the gridiron next season.
As I was gonna say,
Never know. Might be a commentator out there
Waterboy?
we have spoken
Could
a
be that
lot
too.
about the ability to
for the
do
cheerleaders.
anything that you can conceive, and I truly believe that is mostly true.
I think
But
Cajun
delusion
I,
is a very real thing.
And I've been pretty delusional all my life.
Well,
I go after it, I get it done, and I make it happen.
And I know we need to move on, but I want to say this last little piece here on this
Yes,
here
go ahead.
because you're talking about, and writing is a good example. There are millions upon millions upon millions of people here in this country every single day because the opportunity is there for them to self-publish or to find ways that are attempting to enter into an industry that it's just some people just don't have. You have to have a certain degree of talent and or experience or combination thereof to succeed in that in a meaningful manner. And I suspect that there are.
Who are you to define meaningful
Again,
for someone else?
well,
Is
that's
what I
right.
mean.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm presuming that's going to be accolades, success, sales, whatever you want to put that on
See
there.
that's my point. For some people, just finishing it and getting it into the marketplace, whether somebody buys it or not, is the achievement.
I understand. And it's a fluid
It's
thing.
very fluid.
Like, do you think Picasso was a genius, or does it look like a 4-year-old with crayons did it? I mean,
Both.
That's very fluid there.
That's right.
Right.
And some of that is highly subjective, and I recognize that.
And that's where you can make the most of it with your dreams you're chasing, whether you have inherent talent or not.
So you have the ability to remake reality based
My
on
reality, yes.
well, that's what I'm asking is on.
You have the ability to remake the circumstances of your life. I would not, because reality is reality.
Well, that's-
Reality is perception.
well, therein lies is the
reality.
tension.
I can
I'm-
change my perception on anything.
for
Yeah, I still stand by. I can
yeah,
remake my
I mean,
reality.
for a physical pursuit, maybe not, but for a mental pursuit, if you focus and practice at it and try, perhaps you can. I think Cajun and I really need to
Perhaps.
study here and start a website for fantasy sports based on lingerie football.
I'm up for that.
I think that'd be in his wheelhouse. So,
What's the subscription price on that?
well, at first it might not
Toss
be
out
a
on
whole
fans
lot,
only.
but you know,
I think only.
we'll hire an app writer like FanDuel.
Well,
and
just
we'll
go
get
through
right there.
OnlyFans and you'll figure it out.
So
I'm
I mean,
sure.
we could start a betting site and all kinds of stuff, make some money on lingerie football, Cajun.
You just gave this idea out to somebody that's actually got the funding at the moment already sitting
Hey,
Hey,
Well,
just
we can
cut-
edit this section out.
well, as
cut me in, and I'm good.
as we've often said, though, it is about the right people. It is always about
Yeah,
the right people, and that's all it ever is. But Andre,
Yes, go for it. Give us another one.
Okay, this one should we take a break for a bourbon break first?
You're the captain.
Oh, okay. Well, then let's do a bourbon break since
Okay.
we're about that time.
All right.
definitely yes.
Bourbon break.
And I'm going to start by talking about an infinity bottle on my shelf that months ago when I filled it up, I was certain I would never forget what I put in that bottle. And I am,
Now it is infinity bottle of one.
so currently of one.
Yes.
And I'm sipping it, enjoying it. It has a very peppery taste to it. But, and as it blooms, it's become very smooth. I enjoy it, and I wish I could recommend it to you, but
You have no idea what
You
it
ain't
is.
got a clue, do
I
you?
have no clue what it is.
And I am drinking from the same bottle. It is something I have had before. It does have a bit of pepper to it. It also has a bit of anise, a licorice taste. I too find also in there.
It's not a rye, though. Am I correct?
No, it's not a rye. It
Say-
doesn't have the heat, and it's not a real high proof either. I'm almost pushing towards something out of the Buffalo Trace distillery. I noticed that anise flavor in a lot of their products out of Buffalo Trace, but they're not the only ones I've found it in.
It would have
Interesting.
It would have to be one of their lower end bourbons because what I put in decanters I usually use as a mixer, so it probably wouldn't be one of their premium bourbons.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at your shelf over here. You've got a bottle of Buffalo Trace, so I wouldn't be that brand
Oh,
for sure.
I would.
Well,
not-
no,
I mean,
until
that's the only entry level I would think they've got, right? It
Pretty
doesn't go from Buffalo Trace to Blanton's and E.H. Taylor, right?
I would not put E.H. Taylor or I wouldn't put any of those in a decanter. I'd save the bottle.
Well, the new one out of Buffalo Trace too is the pinup with Chris Stapleton, Traveler,
Traveler was
which I got to taste a couple weeks ago in Indiana.
Oh, you
and
did?
It
Okay.
is good. I enjoyed
I'm
it.
very interested in that one because I
And it says
like
whiskey
the
on the bottle, I think, because it's a blend. It doesn't say bourbon, but it's standing tall on its own.
Here, something just came to memory. One of those bottles, I believe, is a Peerless.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. We have. I've had it, but we don't think we've ever featured
We've never had
featured
that
on the show.
no, not on the show.
Could this be Peerless?
No.
I mean,
Okay.
Peerless
I was
wouldn't
just
be a
at the
mixer.
Phyllis
I mean,
Distillery within the last 6 months and did the taste and the stuff, and this is not Peerless.
Okay.
Okay.
Peerless has a little bit more kick than this does to it.
Interesting.
It's a little
Robert, what
lighter.
did you have, sir?
I poured some of the Old Forester
Black Label. Yeah.
that you guys had before, and you're right. I'm getting that caramel sweetness.
Yeah,
It's
it's a little muted, so it's more like the salted caramel, where
Yeah.
it's kind of a little balanced and even.
This is one I would definitely prefer on ice to let it bloom.
Yeah.
Didn't care for it as much neat as I did the others we had tried today. The ethanol seemed to come through just a little bit more at
Yeah,
first.
It didn't for me, but the palate's different.
Right.
I really, really, really liked it. So
Yes. Oh no, this is excellent. Yeah, bloomed. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I'm drinking as well. And
yeah,
I think
I'm
you're right.
getting-
It's designed to be bloomed.
I've got a lot in the mouth, but it finishes with a nice Kentucky hug. It's almost like it's transported from my mouth to my stomach because I don't really notice it going down.
Yeah.
But it just all of a sudden there's
like-
warmth down here in my
Yeah.
stomach.
Yeah. The kiss is primary, I think.
Yes.
It seemed more complex than even I could sort through, so I really liked it. I poured some of Brother Andre's Four Roses small batch.
Oh,
I haven't had that on the show in a long time.
Yeah. Didn't you have some bottle of that? That's
Yes,
what
I
thought.
did.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
so it's very pleasant, as good as memory. Kind of a little touch of maybe brown sugar, and maybe even a little mint.
Really?
Just a little touch. It depends on the sip. I'm not getting it every sip, but
That's one bourbon I have never bought in any form.
Really?
Yeah.
Four
And
Roses
I don't know why.
is
It's just
good. Different grade. The different expressions are all very tasty for their.
Yeah,
price
even
point.
the $20 bottle is just a great.
Yeah.
I know it's very reliable and excellent. I just, for whatever reason, I just haven't done it. I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Again, comfort bourbon.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
it-
Would you consider this a good mixer? Just curious.
I mean, it just depends on what your definition of the mixer is. If you're saying, well, a low ender that is
Needs help.
fine to cover up or needs help, no. To me, this is a very good standalone sipper.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, that's the
I
herein
mean,
lies.
it's right there with other price point, similar price point sippers. It's right
And this,
there.
I think, is like a $35
Oh,
bottle.
yeah.
Something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
I'll give you a little Four Roses trivia.
Yeah.
And I found out when we went, about 6-8 months ago to the Four Roses for a tasting. You remember the iconic picture of the sailor and the woman kissing in Times Square at the
Very
end
much
of the
so,
war?
yes.
If you look back in the background, you can see a big Four Roses billboard on one of the buildings there advertising Four Roses at that time.
Really, I didn't think they were selling in the U.S. at that time.
They were shipping overseas and stuff at that time. They were in continuous production and was able to somehow go overseas with it. You'd have to look up the entire story on
That-
that.
Right. I'm just surprised there would be a billboard though.
Four
in the
Roses was
US.
a Seagram's brand. Am I right? Originally, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so on that.
So-
They've pretty much been their own thing ever since.
Perhaps Seagram's ended up buying them, or they said that. I don't know. I may be wrong. Of
Yeah,
course.
a lot of the brands have changed hands multiple times. So
Yeah, and
they
some of
get-
the older
they get
labels
resurrected.
are not what they
It's
used to
not
be
the same-
either.
I
yeah.
mean, we love Yellowstone, but the Yellowstone you buy now is a craft bourbon,
yes.
and it's not the same as
They
like,
bought the
Like Waddy Boone.
yeah.
Well, yeah, Waddy Bill or J.W. Dant. I mean, for
Right,
goodness
yeah,
sakes, the
exactly.
Dant family can't even use their own name in their probably because they sold it to Heaven Hill.
No, I think Four Roses has been its own entity for a long
And
time, and that's
totally
special
maybe.
circumstances where they were able to keep producing even during the shutdown times. And for a while, they wasn't even selling in the U.S.,
Right.
but they were selling overseas though.
Right. That's why I'm just surprised that in the 1945 that there would have been a billboard in the U.S. for it, because I didn't think then at that point they were selling in the
It
U.S.
might have just been coming back at that point at the end
Could
of the
be.
war. I don't remember the
I gotta
exact
look up that
details
picture.
of it. I just remember they showed us the picture up there, and they said, look in the background, because everybody's focus goes instantly to the man and woman,
Yep.
in that photo.
I have got to look up that photo now. That's an
Yeah,
awesome piece
yeah.
of trivia.
I'm curious if when they showed that thing in the Watchmen movie,
At least I hope
Have
I'm
they
remembering
changed
right.
it? that if they kept that. Right.
So, Francis, what are you drinking?
I'm the same thing you are. I'm that Old Forester, the Black Label, and I'm affirming everything that you have said at this point. Here, there's a little bit of pepper, not a huge amount. It's not like a rye, but the kiss is very quick and very intense, the way kisses should be, I would think, and but yet it still has the hug.
Nothing wrong with a long, deep kiss, too.
Absolutely, yes. It's the intensity I'm
What-
kind
what,
of speaking of.
Long, wet, deep kisses that last 3 days. Is that the Bull Durham quote?
I don't know, but I'm liking it. If it ain't, it should be.
Yes, I believe that is from Bull Durham.
That's all right.
But yes, I find this is very smooth and mellow compared to some of the Whiskey Rose series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely different from that.
Yeah,
Yes, correct.
yeah.
Which is the good thing. They
Yeah, which
should-
is a good
they
thing.
should not all be the same since it's the same brand.
Yes, it does remind me a little bit more of the signature, in that sense. Which is 100 proof. This is a 90, but again, smoother, mellower overall flavor.
Mellow is always good.
Yes, and not always, but yes. Sometimes you want something a little rougher.
Don't say that too loud. Cage is going to weigh in here in a second. He's looking.
He's looking up a picture. He's
I already,
occupied.
I already giggled when he
I got my
said
travel Vaseline along.
he likes it.
Oh,
rougher.
excellent.
Oh, for God's
Always be prepared.
I've learned well from the Emperor.
But this is true. Yes, who is not with us today. He's
Yes, he is still recuperating.
That's correct. But we send him our great wishes.
All hail the Imperator.
Yeah, all hail,
Yes,
yeah.
all hail the Empire.
Hail the Empire. Hail the Empire.
Yes, we miss the sexy beast a great deal.
That's right.
Yes.
We look forward to him rejoining us, and
It's just a shame he's missed it here at Studio A because it's been an excellent experience.
Excellent.
Yes.
Of course.
Well,
Yes,
we'll
and-
be back at Studio A in the summer.
That's
And-
right. Yeah, yeah. We
And
rotate
Brother
around.
Andre, you did a fine job on the meals today. I must say.
Absolutely. I know that's a lot
Yeah.
of work.
yeah.
Oh, it's
that was
my pleasure.
amazing.
I love to cook, and I think one of our upcoming episodes or possibility is talking about cooking. And I'm
Yes.
That's right. It's
I'm
one of our
looking-
Hoopa Tubes coming up. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that's
Good,
gonna
good. I'm glad you're looking forward to it because you'll be doing a lot of the talking.
be- you might be surprised. I can.
I
The,
can
the
make
way you
toast.
become a wonderful cook is by being a wonderful eater to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of us are pretty good.
Well, yeah,
maybe
I'm
you
a
not,
solid
Martin.
eater, but-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martin would be limited as a cook or a chef because he has to eliminate a huge portion of ingredients that go in so many things because chef's got to taste what he's cooking, and
Yeah.
that would leave out a lot of stuff for you.
Yeah, but I kind of like it though because you can eat simple, straightforward food, and I do like it. I do
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. A chicken breast and steamed carrots. That's an awesome meal to me. Or
That
just
can be a
some rice.
fine meal. It just has to be seasoned and prepared
Right,
well.
season and so I can do stuff without a lot of sauce or gravy. Those things are awesome as well.
Would you like some more gravy?
Absolutely.
The answer's
answer's
always yes.
Always yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Says the thinnest man in the room.
I don't know about that, but
Oh, he's
Oh,
talking,
him,
he's
yes.
talking about Martin.
Not
yes.
bad. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I am over 200 pounds, but I guess I'm not quite.
Depends on
you know.
the way the wind is blowing, I
Yeah.
suppose.
So
Oh, Andre, well,
Okay, let us continue with our series of quotes. I'd like to continue with what I consider the jewel of the quotes for this afternoon.
oh, I love
Ooh.
okay.
Oh,
it. Bring it on.
It is from Carl Jung.
Ooh.
Never done Mr. Jung here.
The Jungian thing.
And I think in today's society, in today's cancel culture, this one shouts out for attention. Thinking is difficult. That is why most judge.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, I mean it's super easy to jump on someone else's thought, and just agreement's easy.
Judging by definition is a non-thinking matter.
No.
I mean, as Jung is describing it here.
Well, perhaps, but I mean, I think there's always some level of thinking. The problem is, because I think what he's getting at is you've got your slots that you're going to put people into or situation, whatever, and it requires very little thinking. Obviously, it does require some to put people and things and ideas into those boxes.
Yeah.
Which by its
And-
nature would be dehumanizing.
Oh, well, always.
Well,
Absolutely. That's what.
I think one thing what we might be overlooking here is the word thinking. Thinking, we think of reflecting upon, but
Can you use think again?
thinking is actually a process that must be observed. It is very similar to the scientific process. You gather information, you analyze, you make a hypothesis, and you judge based on what
Well, you test it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a process to thinking. Most people, I think what this is saying is jump to snap decisions without collecting information.
Yes, they're given the premise, they go immediately to the conclusion.
Yeah. Well, and thinking can be thinking should be based on the ideas and the evidence, and judging is often based on the source.
Right. So
So
thinking is by definition, a rational process, but judging may not be.
yeah,
It should be.
It should be.
It-
If
it's-
it is an extension
Yeah,
of the thinking process, it would
you
be.
short circuit the examination of the idea because
Right.
it came from X.
So how does one judge then if one does not think?
Well, no, you have
with
to.
emotion.
Well,
It's
that's
like what
strictly
I was
emotion.
talking about. It's you've got your predefined conclusions.
that's what I'm
and
going to zero in on.
that's when you are presented with something, rather than think about it, examine it, ask and answer questions, because I think thinking is always and only asking a question and answering it.
I have a very topical and current example. On our current college campuses, we have people that are protesting the war in Israel and saying that Israel has went too far. And if I'm straying into political grounds that I need to stay away from, please let me know.
We're
But-
okay. So
No,
far.
no.
But-
Yeah, I think this is an issue.
But people are seeing the potential for human suffering and death in Gaza, and they are immediately jumping to that is bad, and they're not collecting the information that Israel was attacked, and they have every right to defend themselves against their enemies.
Well, but you also said in your premise, again, this is the question and answering part of thinking, that the question was whether or not Israel had gone too far. So I think there is at least tacitly an acceptance of the idea that they should be able to defend themselves. Although there are many out there on college campuses and elsewhere, they're saying no, they shouldn't even defend themselves. I will grant you that. But the question is, the question is it too far? Then that is because I think that's a valid question.
Well, it's a question. That's correct. And we can come to legitimately, I think, come to differing answers in
Yes.
that, depending on our line of reasoning, which kind of goes back to what we're talking about here
Because
is
again,
the judgment that Jung is referring to has no
it goes from, I think it goes premise to conclusion.
correct. There is no process in between. And if we can come to, even if we come to differing opinions, wildly divergent, but if we have given the thought and the reasoning necessary, those are, dare I say, legitimate and worthy of consideration. However, in Jung's point, and I'm thinking what we're saying is, if you do not do the homework, the process, if you do not take
Got to show your work.
you got to show your work. If you do not do that, then you are easily dismissible in your judgment, even if you accidentally come to the right answer.
And you're
Well-
easily manipulable.
Exactly. I was going to say easily
that's,
led.
That's exactly
easily
where we're
led,
going.
yes.
Because you're basing your judgment on something. And I submit
Yeah.
that you're talking about one of two things, perhaps even a combination: cognitive or confirmation bias. Ultimately, bias is
Yeah.
what you're basing it on.
Yeah, there's a huge part of that. I mean, conformity is comfortable,
Yeah. And,
and
that's
where
confirmation.
judging is.
That's
Yes,
confirmation
we're
bias.
all individuals.
I'm
Unmarked.
not.
That's right. And that's the herd mentality is
Yeah.
deep within
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
instincts.
we want to feel safe.
We want the
within-
tribalism
within those numbers, and
that
Yeah.
I've preached against many times, but it is something that has kept us safe. But when we reach a certain
To a degree.
to a degree, when we reach a certain point in society, in civilization, to use that word, does not this tribalism become no longer a good thing, but a bad?
It absolutely does, because we are at that point.
I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
right again
because-
because you short circuit the whole process and you judge the way your tribe does.
Right.
And
Well, and what you were talking about, as far as tribalism keeping us safe, there is a large degree of truth to that. The larger the tribe,
yes,
the more homogenous the thought, obviously.
right.
But once the larger tribes start subdividing into smaller tribes, we get to where we are now. And at a certain point, not only are you no longer safe, but no one is safe.
Yeah, either we all are or none of us are.
Right, because we've seen that on, when we talk about politically and socially, where both sides or multiple sides of any particular argument or question are just simply eating their own young.
Yeah, it's a mob mentality.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
And it is totally emotion driven, skipping over all of that
And that's-
questioning
the
and
intention is
answering.
only to destroy the enemy that is different.
Yes.
And that's where we get racism. That's where we get
Yeah.
things like that. Whereas in the question of Gaza, to go back to what Andre is saying here, so and I'm submitting this, and you guys can throw it down if you want to, but I submit that we are very little thinking is going on, and we are sliding down into tribalization, depending on what political side we are on. And I think it has
Yeah,
metastasized to that point.
even beyond that, I mean, we slide into judging based on our experience, and the older we are, the more experience we have with this question. And this is, this has been a part of our life, for our generation, our whole lives. This
Oh yeah,
question
and
about,
and it's
you
coming
know,
close to our parents'
68,
lives.
73, whatever. I mean, yes, this is a question that's been out there for a long time. And when you have a very short perspective on it of just the relatively peaceful last few years and seeing what's happening now, it's easy to jump to this, oh, well, they're just trying to like eliminate it's genocide. It's like,
No,
let's
yeah,
that's a very
perspective.
small perspective. Let's get bigger on this, and again, you have to understand all of the underlying pieces that are going on. Who funds all this? Where is this
There's
money
been a
coming
lot of
from?
talk about that. Yes.
Yes.
Be careful. You're approaching the thinking phase.
There you go.
Very
There you
well
go.
put, sir.
Yeah.
Very much. I must
Well,
say.
There's an analysis, and almost everything. I always say this too. Everything's more complicated than you think.
Yes.
Sometimes we want to say, well, things are simple. Well,
Wouldn't it be nice? We need
just
it that
one
way,
stretch of
but
it
it
might
ain't.
be simple, but there's almost always more complications
The
underneath.
more individuals you add to the equation, the more exponentially the complexities
Look,
And-
grow.
Trevor Slattery was always right.
Yes,
it's
it's complicated.
Sometimes
Uh,
you overcomplicate.
It sounds like
simple
Jung
things.
is
Yes.
A bullet per bad person is good math.
Well,
Unless your aim is bad and you need more than one.
right. It's how many more bad actors do we need to figure out are involved in all this?
Right. But I mean,
Iran,
it's
North
still
Korea,
also,
or who?
but I still say that it is also a valid question to ask. Is the Israeli response proportionate?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely need to ask, and certainly here's the thing about it is because Israel is a democracy, they can ask that question of themselves,
I think they have.
and so
yeah.
they get to make that decision, and there are no other entities in the region that are by the consent of the people in the same way.
No, but I don't think that means that only a democracy can
It
ask
doesn't
those
mean
questions.
it doesn't mean they're de facto right, but it does mean they will examine themselves. Whereas
I
you
think-
often in
Ooh,
other
not sure.
places they don't have that option.
I understand that, but Jordan is a great example of doing the right thing 99.9% of the time, even though they are not a democracy. They have internal systems that de facto, for whatever reason, work that way. They have a very stable, a very reasonable regime that often will not back the hard line Arab Israel must be destroyed. They will not. They want to get along with their neighbors and have for a long, long time.
Well,
They've also gotten their butt kicked off.
yeah,
enough
that's
to where
because
they-
Well, I mean,
they're
whatever got them there,
losers, so
they have realized.
but you are right. They are now.
they stand.
Although you can
stand apart
also,
from all this, yes.
but you can also argue that much of the existing problems are exactly after France and England can be laid at Jordan's feet because the Palestinian people are today's Jordanians. They just did not move to Jordan.
Yeah.
Or they did, and they
Yeah.
were told, don't worry, after we annihilate Israel, you can go back. And that's where this whole right of return thing comes. Yeah, the people who want to return, they want to return because, well, we've given up on the immediate destruction of Israel. Or we think we're going to destroy Israel by going back. Yeah, I mean, so there's lots of,
It's complicated.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Complicated.
So,
but anyways, yeah,
well,
that's
wait
a
a
rabbit
minute.
hole. That's
Hey,
a rabbit
hey,
So
hey, it's
basically, what we're
complicated.
saying is we need to study Jung's for an episode sometime.
Well,
Sounds like
he is one we did not get to in our philosophy
He's
series.
the anti-Freud.
Well, we didn't even do Freud. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, those are two guys perhaps
That
we
would
should
be
throw
that
in.
would be good fodder for an episode. Is Freud and Jung.
Absolutely. Well, one each. I mean, come on, let's not. I mean, there's a few others we could throw in there as well.
All right. Well, let's add that to Trello.
All right.
just to conclude on that topic, I want to mention I mentioned the cancel culture. I think that a lot of current day cancel culture is emotional reaction instead of thinking and processing.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah. So
And certainly, some things did happen that she's like, oh, yes, you need to pay for what you have done. There should be consequences. And there should always be consequences if you do something bad. Not always, unfortunately, but there should be. But it's one of those things that you let something go. Once you start it, those unintended consequences start snowballing. And they almost always snowball in the direction of emotional response.
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me cut in just a second. A little update from the bourbon break on the Four Roses sign in
please.
New York Square. Yes, it actually says Four Roses in big lighted letters at the very top of the billboards in the background.
Wow.
And little thing, the advertisement was in New York City Times Square, was in place from 1938 to 1945. And you can find it as such, but a lot of photos won't show you the background. It's focused on the man and the woman. You got to find a photo that shows the entire background to see it.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
Most logical, sir.
Excellent.
Okay, moving on to our next quote. We're going to go from German to over in the Far East from Lao Tzu.
Okay.
Care about what others think about you, and you will always be their prisoner.
Ooh, yeah. This is one where I would very much
What I think.
like to have.
Both ways.
I would like to have the Imperator's thoughts on this one.
Care about what others would think, and you will always be their prisoner.
Yeah, because Sexy Beast could give a flying rat's ass of what other people think.
That's right, and he has made a successful career out of that, as a successful life out of that.
Yeah.
He is the poster boy for forging one's own destiny.
It's very freeing. The chains are not
Well,
there to
there's a-
hold you back.
Well, there's a
because you don't
liberation.
give a
There's no
flying
question.
rat's.
That's right. And so, in other words, and I'll steal from Don Henley on this. When we, and you guys remember in the song "The Eagles," we talked about, we oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and never even know we have the key. That's so many of our imprisoning things are self-imposed.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is because we are so focused, so fixated, shall we say, maybe it's a better word, on what others think, that we are incapable in the extreme or unwilling in the more common fashion of thinking for ourselves and following our dreams.
I think it's a both and.
Yeah, I'm not excluding.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
making an exclusion. here.
We've talked about before that there's a difference between character and reputation.
Yes.
Character is self-driven. Being able to look at yourself. Reputation is the
External.
reflection
Yeah.
from the outside. I think that's very much.
Reputation should flow from character, but doesn't always.
But if you care about character, then reputation takes care of itself.
Oh, absolutely.
If you
'cause
care
sooner or
about
later-
reputation, then character is corrupt.
Sometimes the politeness of caring is simply a facade, so you'll shut up.
well, there's no doubt about that. That's right.
Well, every husband knows that.
I wasn't going to say that, but I'm glad
That
you
doesn't
did.
count for me, dear.
Does your wife listen?
Oh, indeed.
Oh, excellent.
I think she's always listener number one on Fridays.
Fantastic.
Well,
yeah.
Mrs. Andre, don't tell Mrs. Robert I said that.
That's
Yeah, you were the one that fell on your sword on that one, not I. That's for
Well,
sure.
at this point, she's stuck with me.
Well, yeah, that's a very speaking of liberation, that's a very liberating idea, isn't it? Yes, right.
And, if you're always worried about what others think of you, are you ever truly free?
Absolutely, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth to that. Now, I think again, it's a question of degree. There's no question that no man is an island. We must get along with those around us by definition.
Sure.
But you're
See, I always
right.
feel like when Martin agrees with something like that, he's like, yeah, sure, okay, fine.
No, but that's again that speaks to character versus reputation.
That's right, because there
I like
is
that
a
analysis.
certain amount of altruism, and that it must go with good character.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not struggling with being a good person and yet still having massive amounts of road rage when nobody will get out of the damn left lane in this town.
We almost had a bleep there, I'm sure.
I experienced that on the way over here this morning.
I did find today,
well done,
yesterday,
sir.
way to work, this woman would not get out of the left lane and would brake, not when a car in front of her, half a mile away, was braking, but when somebody would brake in another lane.
When the wind would blow left.
Right, and then braking in the, it's like, oh my, I am going to run you into a guardrail. Why?
She's keeping herself from going above 55.
Yeah, and
This is why Martin
won't
should
pass
work at
other
home.
people.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you balance this selfishness of this person who's screwing up the entire highway in rush hour versus, I really would like to be a nice person.
If it weren't for other
But
people.
you keep screwing it up, people.
If it weren't for-
So
Martin
you're
wants to be a nice guy, but it's all your fault.
yes, you're a jackass because of everybody else.
It's their fault.
Yes, it's all your fault.
Yes, that makes total sense now.
Yes, it
Yes,
does.
yes.
I've tried to get better at that. I really have. I have.
well-
One thing that has helped me is I have presumed that the people that drive that way don't know what they're doing and aren't from around here, and it's actually helped. Yes.
Well, yeah, that you're wrong in that not
You're
from
wrong.
around here.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, hey, this is a
That's
question
what
of
he's telling
mindset.
himself to
What-
make it easier.
Whatever it takes to get through the day.
That's exactly it. That's right.
But back to the question of, I think that to a certain degree, it's not a bad thing to have some concern with what people think of you, because in many ways, it's how we self-regulate bad behavior.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing.
Because it's selfish behavior, which is always not almost always
Emotional
For
intelligence.
me, it's a good day. I didn't shoot anybody, is what you're saying?
Thank you.
possibly, yeah.
Emotional intelligence is based on this premise of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Because think about it. So many people don't do things because they don't want to get caught, right?
Yeah.
Or you don't do things because you don't want to have to confess that to your priest.
Speaking of priest, I think that all of those that are called to follow Jesus Christ are called to follow this model of not caring what others think. Because if you look at a Christian lifestyle, it makes no sense if you're only focused on self.
Oh, it's absolutely outwardly focused.
Yeah.
No question. In fact, and I'll go so far as to say this, that might be our salvation as a species. If we could learn truly to feel for our neighbor and our brother, then just quote Spock, our history would have been a lot less bloody. See, you didn't know you were sending me there, but there's truth to that. There's absolutely truth to that. If we felt compassion inherently, if we could not avoid it, then we would have treated each other much better.
That's kind of ironic, considering the Vulcans had a pretty bloody past also.
Until
It
they
took them a while to get there.
Well, and then they went totally opposite into a very uncaring about anybody else.
One extreme to the other.
That's
And Robert, I think you hit on when you talk about Jung or Freud. You're really, I think where you were going was very much this: how do we move through these different stages of maturity? Where yes, originally perhaps as in what do they call it, the id and the ego and superego, as you move through these progressions in life, yeah, you start out being concerned about what others think. That's the germ of character. That's the kickoff, and then as you mature and move through those psychological stages, you can get to an idea of no, characters for me, not for others.
Well, I think it's one of the ways in which we conform to our social group, whatever that group may be.
That's where we begin.
So
yeah.
where Brother Andre was saying that about Christians should not be concerned with what other people think in that countercultural sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
But should we be concerned about the rest of us in that group.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it depends on what your standard is.
And yet there's a huge
'Cause-
diversity in those who call themselves Christian.
Yes.
Uh,
Well,
enormous diversity.
yes, all the non-Catholics are wrong.
He tees them up and he hits them out of the park.
So, but seriously, everybody has that social group that provides a standard, except maybe Sexy Beast and Cajun, who are their social group of one.
Have forged their own path.
Amen, preach it, brother.
But then
You know,
again,
but even so, though, there is a standard. Whether it is a very small group that defines that, or a very large group, we still conform to some standard.
in other words,
that's
there
almost
is no,
always
there
external
is
to
no
us.
such thing as a pure self-determination.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, purely
'Cause
self.
there's always influences
Has to be.
and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
factors.
Yeah, there's things you're synthesizing into your character.
There's the word, yes, because
You know, again,
there are
we
influences
talk
that are
about-
synthesized.
Right.
So ultimately, you and you alone are responsible for the product of the synthesization, but the synthesization depends on raw materials
Yeah.
gleaned.
Whatever you
from
that
experience.
that you're pulling in. Again, you talk about Cajun and the Imperator being a group of one, yet their background is cradle Catholic. Much like yours,
In
Francis.
both cases, yeah.
And yes, they found that perhaps not completely fulfilling and went a different path, but it is still part of their character. Again,
I submit it influences both of them more
I
than
think
they would
it
admit.
more than they
Yes.
will admit.
Correct.
But I mean, as much as we talk about the two of them being this super individual, I cannot imagine either one of them casually hurting anyone else,
Absolutely not.
hurting anyone's feelings.
No.
At all. I mean,
well, not casually.
Yeah.
not casually.
Deliberately.
It would be very on purpose.
Yeah.
Right,
Under certain
I mean, when you
circumstances.
think, again,
Under certain
we-
circumstances.
we talk about the Imperator and we give him a ton of crap, but man, at his core, he's actually a super nice guy.
He is
He
he
is.
is one of the most compassionate individuals you will ever meet.
right.
Has been since we ever met him.
He hates to see people hurting.
He
That's right.
does.
That's
He
right.
is a very compassionate
So
man.
just because you forged your own path that is unique, I submit we
Yeah.
all are, by the way, even those of those most.
Yes, we're all
conformative.
unique.
That's right. We are.
We're all individuals.
that we still recognize certain truths and incorporate those. We goods versus bads. We
Dare I-
still work towards
Dare I
that.
bring up one more name?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
It's very Nietzschean.
Okay. All right.
It's
Defend thyself.
A,
Say
it's a will
will to power.
to power over finding your own character, finding your own path is a will to power over your circumstances.
It is a function of will. There's no question.
I would grant that. I think, though, with Nietzsche, that ultimate end being whatever is good for me, being the highest good, that is, I think, where it falls apart.
But
because-
it's right. It's a self-actualization. People corrupt it into power over others, but it's more about the power over yourself and how you interact with others.
Well, yeah. Hemingway talked about that. Your greatest achievement is being better than your previous self. It's the same type of thing. It's that's very Nietzsche.
I think I feel like that. Yeah, that's a very Nietzsche.
yeah.
Nietzsche is very self and narrowly focused. He's not speaking so much about a societal thing. Correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong.
So at least I feel in what we have, and we've only scratched the surface on Nietzsche, but
Yeah.
this perception, and again, his sister editing his stuff fed into this, where the Ubermensch was this Aryan Superman. That's not where he wanted to go with it. That's not his thought at all. That's his sister later on becoming so, pro-Aryan. His thought is very much you need to master yourself. So
Well, I would like to make one theological differentiation. We mentioned a moment ago that Christians facilitated or demonstrated morality. One thing I want to point out is our religion doesn't teach morality. Morality is a side effect of our faith.
yes.
It is not
Yes.
not something we teach.
Agreed. I mean, it's that's one of the beautiful things about it is that you take these teachings and these pronouncements and this personhood of Jesus Christ in this case here, and extrapolate morality from that.
Yes, we provide the principles. Again, Roman law, you set the standard,
Yeah,
and then it's your job to live up to it.
that's right.
Knowing that we will not always do that.
That's right. That we're always it's like calculus. You can get infinitely close to the point by going halfway,
never reach it.
never
reach it. Yes,
that's right.
So, so are we? Do we have any more quotes? Do we have?
Oh, I've got quotes if we've got time.
Well, I mean, we're at hour 4. So
Yeah, let's
Okay.
try one
Well,
more.
One
and-
more.
let's move on. And this one goes way back to Pythagoras.
He
Oh.
is digging deep.
He digging Greek.
Cajun
Seneca?
don't do math.
Well, this one does not involve triangles.
Okay, good.
That's good.
A fool is known by his speech, a wise man by his silence.
Oh yeah, we talked a little bit about this at lunch, similar to the Twain version of that. It's better to be silent and let people think you're the fool than speak and let confirm that. So
Yes, and I said we must be some hella fools because
We
we are
talk-
never silent.
talking all the
Shut
time.
The hell up.
Yes.
give us a quote again, because I just kind of
The quote again was, "A fool is known by his speech, a wise man by his silence."
Which, for any of those young Sheldon viewers out there, a couple weeks back here, when Sheldon goes to Germany and is suddenly surrounded by various other students that have been to much higher universities and tutored under much more qualified individuals, finds out just how little he does not know. When he thinks there's 6 dimensions and there's actually 26 underneath somebody's 3, whatever, I don't remember. But it's kind of odd because he has to get it drilled into his head. He needs to shut up and listen. He's there to learn,
I think-
not be the smartest in the room.
think you
And
are
it's
right.
a very tough lesson for him.
I think you have nailed it exactly. That's what Pythagoras is trying to talk about here. Is
I think it's humility.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
There's no question in my mind that is the key ingredient for success in just about anything, particularly in ministry. I can say this for a fact because I've seen it. Those who are humble succeed, those who are not fail. And it is absolutely the case because humility is a antithesis of that which
Oh, you want a word boner?
yeah,
Sorry.
I'd like to think
Say the word again.
antithesis
Word boner. Yeah.
Of-
Give him a button.
of where we're trying to go. We're helping others. Because humble, call it clericalism, call it selfishness, call it a lack of humility, whatever you want to call it. It's obviously inwardly, selfly focused, and it's a success, at least, especially in ministry, but in most everything else, is always outwardly focused.
I'll take our analysis one step further, and I
Please.
think that a person who's speaking is trying to convince you that their understanding of a issue is the right one, and a person who's discovered the truth can silently sit back and watch, knowing what the truth is.
Well, anytime you go into therapy or anything like that, one of the first things they're going to tell you is this is, and I've preached this many times to folks, is you're going to usually the death of relationships are the fact that someone is not listening and they are trying to
What'd you say?
trying to format they're taking the time while the other talks to format their rebuttal, their response, as opposed to listening to the other person's perspective. And therein lies, I think, is exactly where Pythagoras is going on this.
Yeah, repeat the quote, if you would.
The quote again is, "A fool is known by his speech, a wise man by his silence."
If you
I
want
find it interesting that the quote does not categorically say you're a fool when you speak and wise when you're silent.
right,
It's just that you know for sure,
that's very, very telling.
because obviously a wise man, if you're wise, I think there's also it's recognized. You only know if you're wise truly when you impart that, you offer, not force upon, because the fool would be forcing their opinions upon others,
Right.
whereas the wise man would be offering their wisdom and knowledge for others to either take or not. That's entirely up
Waiting
to
for
them.
everybody else to have their say, synthesizing all of that, add it to information and data you already have.
Synergistically.
Yep, and then
Word boner.
word boner, and then you're figuring it out at the end.
Yeah, and certainly, somebody might be a fool, but it is absolutely true that you don't know for sure until they open their mouth. I think that is absolutely true.
Well-
But honestly, I think it's also true about the wise man. You don't really know if they're wise, because just because you're silent just might mean that you're stupid and you don't know anything.
Well, you made a key
You're
point.
wise enough to keep your yap shut when you don't.
Well, no, that's true. Yes.
Well, you made a key point when you said the fool is pushing his supposed knowledge off on others, while the wise man will wait to be asked for what he thinks before he opens his mouth. I mean, he's not trying to override anybody. I think that's the key difference there. He withholds until it's a wise time to speak.
It's a commentary on, I think, maturity in one particular spec,
Yep.
but it's also a concept, a commentary on self-awareness, which is a key component in emotional intelligence. You have to have self-awareness in order to have self-regulation. They are literally A and then B. They follow directly from the other. You will not self-regulate without the awareness to do so, and that's what we're talking about here.
Touching on a subject we talked about previously, maybe the wise man is going through the process of thinking before speaking.
Oh, I would say that's absolutely.
yeah.
I think they're absolutely in harmony with each other.
Yes,
both these
but
quotes.
not in that just waiting for somebody to stop speaking so that they can make their point. It's
right.
truly the
It's an internal process.
yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, and, this is all tools. We're talking about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. These are tools in how to become. We've talked about the tools and how we become our highest, best self. These are all things that I think
a fully
work in
realized
that.
human and
Yes.
ubermensch, whatever it is.
Yes, whatever the term you may choose, and how you understand it, because Ubermensch, I hesitate to want to throw out there, and that,
Exactly. I mean,
because of the negative
right,
connotations.
right. You
But in the original understanding, yes,
yeah,
uh,
it's a will over your baser instincts, and
and recognizing you have baser instincts.
a will to be a more fully realized human that then understands others and all
That
of those things.
to tie it home, as I am wont to do, to not only respect that inherent dignity of the human person in others, but to recognize it in yourself. For some people, that's an incredibly hard thing to do, especially those who worry about things that haven't happened yet, as we talked about in an earlier quote, and they suffer in that worry.
Well, it seems like we're all in agreement on the base concept of this quote, but I think very closely tied is my last quote, and
Okay.
let's move over to that one.
Sure.
And now this one was cited by many different people, but the preponderance of evidence quotes it to Lorne Michaels, and it says, "If you are the smartest person in a room, you are in the wrong room."
There's a clever wit with regards to that. That's for certain. Lorne Michaels, I think, was a TV producer. Am I right?
If I'm not mistaken,
Is a
it's-
TV producer of
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
It still is. I didn't realize
I
that. Yeah.
believe he's still doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say-
if you're the smartest person in the room, are you going to learn anything?
Which goes directly back to my previous example.
Is it-
Sheldon on his Germany trip.
True. Is it a commentary about humility, or is it a commentary about small-mindedness?
Both.
Both.
I think
From the way
there's
they
some
used
truth
it
to
in the
that.
episode, exactly. I mean, perfect
You know-
example.
We can grow very comfortable in our reputation of being the big fish in the small pond, but we're not going to get any bigger if we choose not to grow and move to a bigger pond.
In other words, growth is an infinitely desirable quality.
Yes.
Fair?
Yes,
If
and
you-
you have to have humility to be able to listen and grow and do.
Right. So if we're talking about here, so growth is the good in this a whole thing here we're talking about. In the absence of growth,
Is death.
stagnation and death. Exactly. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Is that, in other words, and his admonition to everyone is going to be: no matter how smart you are, you need to continue to learn and grow and get better and expand your universe, expand your mind as long as you can.
Brother Andre's analogy of the pond is very apt. I mean, that's right on the money.
I wish I'd heard it now.
Ponds are, a pond
step
or-
away.
is finite.
All ponds
And-
are. All
yeah,
ponds
and
are.
by definition. That's a finite environment.
As the room is
Yeah,
in the
and-
case here, no matter how big it is.
You can't
if
get
you're-
any better.
I would say one thing I'd like to point out is because again, this is how my mind thinks. Yes, if I find I'm the smartest person in the room, which rarely happens, although yeah, I think it really does more often. But that's beside the point.
We'll
That's my
ask
own
your
ego.
wife. I'm sure she'll
Yes.
tell us
If
the
you're
truth.
by yourself, you would.
Well, that's true. Well, and sometimes that is a good thing, but sometimes it's a bad thing. But I think rather than being in the wrong room, you just need to add more people to the room.
Well,
Because some-
kind of what
Yes.
Michael's is saying here. You know, talk about
Little
you need
column
another
A,
room.
In the
Column
pond,
B.
then.
Yeah. Well, see, I missed the analogy about that.
The analogy I used was if we can grow very comfortable in being the big fish in a small pond, but we're not going to grow any bigger unless we.
Yes. That's perfect. Yes,
ponds, yeah.
exactly.
You either have to change locations or change the perimeters of the location you're in.
Yes.
So if you're in a small pond, you can bring new fish in and learn from them.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll be
Or
a food
go
source.
to a bigger pond.
It's interesting. Some people they are perfectly happy in that small pond, and contrary to what the quote says, I think that's okay for some people. Now, if it's
Is it though?
yes,
But there's
because if there's a certain
Yeah.
people, some people
yeah.
can only handle certain things, whether it be ideas, concepts, whatever, jobs, expanding what they are able to think about, whatever you want to call it. And if they are comfortable, and again, this presumes that there is no harm resulting in them being in that smaller pond, then I think that's fine. For myself, and I think for all of us here, that's a very limiting life.
Well, yeah, and I think
Not everybody is going to see that.
Yeah.
I think what
Kinda
Andre's
like the
saying
lady
here.
answering the phones at the small mom and pop plumbing supply down here does an excellent job. She's everybody's grandma. She brings her baked goods. She's a star of the store. All of a sudden, she goes and gets a job at Acme Nationwide Plumbing and suffers a nervous breakdown because she can't handle it.
I
So
think
that's
I think,
an example.
that's
of,
a
you
good
know,
practical
working
exactly
small
right,
ponds.
because
she's doing great.
I think
in
Michael's
limited.
is kind of short-sighted. He's saying that is a universal truth. I don't think it can be. Some people
Right.
can only do as what they can do. And here's an example. You guys remember Dilbert? I'm sure I used to
A
read
great
it every.
philosopher.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one I never will forget because it's when I started writing. Dilbert walks up to the secretary. I cannot remember her name, and he says, "I'm thinking of writing a novel." And she screams at him, says, "Stay in your lane. I have no ambition, and I despise anyone who does." And I'm thinking there are many people like that.
Yes,
in this
and
world.
the problem there would be the people that say stay in your lane. I despise people who have ambition.
Yeah.
Because that's doing harm.
That's right, because she herself has none.
But there are many. Yes,
there are many. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. I mean,
And that
is
would kind of
what we've
says that
screamed
goes to
about.
say that Michael's statement is not universal.
I'm going to defend his statement by using the analogy of Grandma Thelma over here at the plumbing company.
Yeah.
She might not learn any more about plumbing, but Bacajah was talking to us about how she was developing interpersonal relationships. She's not growing in plumbing, but she's growing by making connections
She
with
was,
the people she's working
But
with.
she reaches an apex that she cannot go beyond without harm. And that's when she changes job and goes to large Acme, she has gotten out of her depth.
Too much input, too much stress. So people can't deal.
And
There's
there
so much.
and it goes back to my conversations about we all have a certain level of raw materials and that we can only work within that context. And that's a very countercultural and
Yeah.
often a very difficult conversation to have, to say that there are some people that will only be so good and that ambition and achievement is not infinite for all.
It's a very, ironically, it's a very un-American
It is. It's
thing.
correct.
But but I think it is very true.
Reality reflects that.
Yeah, and again,
There's
I
no
think part of
sin
the
in that.
problem comes with though
think there's
people
the
trying
issue.
to force others into boxes that they don't want to be
Well,
in.
it's
Well,
kind of,
yeah, little Johnny, little Susie, you can grow up and do anything you want. But in reality, they cannot do anything that
is
may
a
come to
lie,
mind.
and it is a terrible lie
Well,
for many folks. And I'll give you the example.
Can maybe will absolutely
Well, yeah,
not.
and
because
it-
when you're 6, you want to be a fireman or a cowboy. At least
princess. And-
Well,
Or
and I'll
princess,
give
yeah.
I'll give you the
Astronaut.
really awful evaluation of all the kids that dream of being the the NBA stars, and knowing that the entire system is rigged very clearly, that there's no, so for some people there's no amount of work that you can do that will get you there. You have to have a certain amount, a certain level of raw material, raw talent to work with to be able to achieve that goal.
It goes back
Kinda
to other
like
things
a
we're talking about. You got to know yourself.
Well, that's right, yeah. And
Yeah.
you have to have a certain level of that. To say that it is universally available for every single 6-year-old to become an NBA star is harmful.
You're not going to send 1,000 volts into a house wide for 200 amps.
It's
at
the same.
best.
It's
I mean,
exactly that.
it's got to be able to carry the voltage.
We
carry
all
enough
have our
power.
own individual bandwidth, and
Yeah.
it is capped
Well,
based on raw materials.
Well, I don't know if we say capped. It can be changed and developed to a certain degree.
it's
but there
expandable.
are limitations.
It's expandable, but not infinitely so.
but when you're 6, I don't think it's a crime to tell kids, because you're very much, it's one of the worst things you can tell a kid. I think that's absolutely not
well,
true,
and then
because
that's kind of
you
why I laid
don't-
it out that way.
because you don't know when you're 6 what's possible. Your parents don't know what's truly possible.
Yeah.
If you deny them that possibility from the very beginning, that is a greater disservice than them finding out, okay, I really can't do that.
So where is the line? Which is the reason I used that analogy.
Well, you can do encouragement. You can try to become a doctor. This is what you're going to have to study. This is what you're
Right.
going to get good at. But you can't say, I'll guarantee you'll become a doctor.
Exactly.
'cause you're
Nothing
my-"
is guaranteed. You cannot say, you can say, yeah, you can do anything. Can is, it's a very fungible word in terms of how you can mean that, because some people say can meaning, oh, I absolutely will. Can to me means it's possible.
Well,
In
A
all
more common phrase be try.
the system allows you to do that, and therein lies the question: is
Yes, you have to have the
as
freedom
lo-
to
as-
attempt it.
You have to have the freedom of opportunity, which I know is something that Martin would certainly use the language he would use. You have to have the freedom of opportunity to pursue whatever dream you want, but you also have to have the ability to look at things reality.
Yeah.
It's over a continuum.
You have to
because-
be realistic enough to understand there are certain points that you will have to pass or be good enough to get past to follow this path to achieve that. It is not guaranteed for you that you start here and you end up there.
That's right.
Right, we got to stop handing out frickin' participation
Well,
trophies,
at
because it
6
makes people think that, yes, just because I want to do it, I can.
At
See, I got trophies for it.
At 6 years old, your opportunities and potentiality is far closer to infinite than it is going forward in time.
Yes.
By the time 10 comes, that has decreased substantially. By the time 16 has come, it is very narrow, relatively speaking.
Although,
Narrower.
there are some exceptions.
But
For instance, using your NBA example, Michael Jordan was, he did not make the basketball team the first couple. He did not come into his own in basketball until he applied himself, worked his butt off, and I think it was a junior when he finally made the team, and that's pretty late
Yeah.
as
It
far
is.
as that goes.
Yeah.
But he had the physical ability.
He had
to
the raw
develop
Well,
materials.
he
that.
honed himself because
Well-
you gotta be able to.
well,
do
that's
that.
correct. And there is a
I
certain.
mean, hell, Spud Webb was under 6 feet tall, and he was a great basketball player. So, certain things you think, oh, he could never be a basketball player.
Dribble between the knees, dribble between the knees.
Slide between the knees, but I mean, so there are sometimes exceptions to what we think. We say, oh, well, that could never happen, because again, we're doing what we were talking about earlier. We're making snap judgments without going through the steps in between.
That's kind of where I was.
And that
trying to
works
take
both
us.
ways.
Yeah.
Assuming you can do something and assuming somebody can't do something.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of my issues that I have, and I guess this is kind of where I'm trying to take this, is be careful of absolutes, because for every rule there are an infinite number of exceptions. Or to go with Jean-Luc Picard, life itself is an exercise in exceptions, and I think that is a marvelous truth.
So I think there is one more angle to this that I wanted to ask you guys about. So give it to me again, Brother Andre.
If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room.
So I mean, narrowing it to that intellectual ability rather than other types of abilities.
Okay.
The smartest person in the room. It's a call for intellectual curiosity, like you said, I think you're in the wrong room. It's not that those people are less than you, but it's time then to move into a room that's more challenging.
I think that's a charitable interpretation of this because honestly, I thought this is also a little bit egotistical
Yeah.
and
Certainly.
because
There's superiority built
Yeah,
into this. Yeah.
Or is it the opposite on how self-aware of yourself?
how
Yes.
yes
Do
how
you
you
know
should
what
be.
There's
you
that
need to
magic
try to
word again.
improve on yourself? there?
Self-awareness is key.
Yeah, but I really like the part about it. Okay, well, it's time then to move into a different room of that's more challenging, that's more
Recognizing there are some
Stimulating.
people that absolutely positively never will do that. They like
Yeah.
it there.
yeah. I mean, again,
That's a
that
choice.
that
Correct, it
ego-driven.
is. That's right.
I like being this largest appendage in the locker room. Um, that's very shallow, and I think
but it is
Michael's-
common.
Oh, you're
It is
saying you're
common.
my favorite, Richard.
Exactly. So I think I'll give Michael's credit. It is a call to put aside that egotism and move into, a chance to learn and grow. And I personally do enjoy not being the smartest person in the room. I love to soak up stuff from people. It's like, wow, that's incredible.
Well, we are
talent.
schooled, and
I love it.
thank you, Bellarmine, in the Socratic method. We want to sit at the feet of the wise person and soak in the knowledge.
Yeah.
See,
That's as an advantage.
what I took from this is, I got to say goodbye to all you guys. I got to go find a new room.
Well,
That ego-driven drive.
You did hear the point about self-awareness.
you know what the one thing that just hit me after hearing all of your analysis, and maybe I completed my thinking process, was that nothing says you can't continually move rooms.
Not at all.
Right.
We are not
There's a
stuck.
presumption there.
Maybe I go to another room, collect knowledge, and bring it back.
Well, that's an American approach because if you take this back to feudalism, that was impossible. Or if you go to India in the caste system, it is impossible. You cannot change rooms. This is a commentary to kind of go Martin on you on the value of freedom because we have the ability to change rooms at our leisure and at our choice.
Now, just to our friends down under, we probably should add Australia to that clause too, because both of our countries are filled with people that were kicked out.
Oh yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right. And we created something better
Quote
because
John
of the
Winger,
freedom.
We're mutts. Look, our nose is cold.
Well, I think that kind of says the last word. Doesn't it?
I don't know how we could improve on a cold nose. But so, in conclusion, is there any 2-sentence summary you'd like to share?
I don't know, but
No,
there's a
I'll shut up
conclusion.
now.
But I did want to note one thing. We talked about earlier pre-show how I have had my final mass at my old parishes. I just wanted to let everybody know I meant to do this in an earlier episode that we recorded today. So I managed to tie together the last 12 years of my preaching into, because the readings just worked out so damn well,
There are no coincidences. No.
the inherent dignity of the human person.
There you go.
That was what my homily
How
was
could you
about.
possibly work that in?
Yeah. Hey,
It was for some of us. It's not hard.
I know it's my common theme to return to. Every opportunity, there's always that.
Yeah. So I just would like to conclude with I've thoroughly enjoyed my day here. Our first recording session at Studio A. Thanks for your generosity, Brother Andre,
And for your
food was
culinary
awesome.
skills too.
Very skilled. It's awesome to have 2 cooks in the group. With some enjoying Cajun's legendary
kindly.
skills.
I think we're back to you in September, if I recall correctly.
Yes, Bourbon Festival.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
So-
right. With
Who's hosting next month?
Martin is.
Yeah, so it'll probably just be chicken tenders.
Oh, I thought you say like hot dogs and weenies, or hot beans and weenies.
You
I
know, there's
don't even like I mean, beans can be done very well, and I don't do them.
Cajun does some very damn good means.
Yes, he does.
Yep, my famous bourbon baked beans, even if they're only famous in my own mind.
That's right. It's good stuff.
Yep.
But, you know, a little bit of diced up brisket in the beans. Oh man, that is some good stuff.
Well, you say there's 3 meats in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right to say. Yeah, you've got that set down.
Onions and 3 meats. I got it down pretty good.
Amen to that.
But on this note, I will say I will never be the smartest person in the room because out of everybody in the room, somebody will always know a little something more on at least one other subject than I do.
That
Exactly.
is a
You
You just have to
wise,
Very
seek it out.
humble.
a
Yeah,
wise
very
and humble and mature
Yes.
approach.
Yes.
Really, who would have thought that you would have had the mature approach?
Don't let him fool you. He might be the more mature than all of us.
What's next, Francis, buddy?
Next time, boys, we're going to do something we have never done before. We are taking a vacation. That's right. In the month of July, we are not going to have any new episodes dropping. Ooh, awful. However, we'll be back in early August. We're going to ask the question, what the heck happened to the Terminator franchise? So it's going to be a great discussion. Make sure you get a chance to watch all that stuff now in the next 8 weeks or so, guys. When we come back here again, it will be awesome.
We hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern, just in time for your morning commute. And every fifth Friday, we drop a special Hoopajube episode. Spread the word we are on all the major platforms, and leave us a review. That helps others find us. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com. Join us next time. Same snake time, same otter channel.